Howdy goons, we're back with another part of 100 games I beat in 2025. Real quick before we start, I wanted to clarify that these have been in parts because of how my video making process works. First, I'm on Windows 11, which has as much compatibility with ROX as it does with my editing program, which makes editing long videos difficult because of crashing. Second, I have ADHD, and if I don't do these in bite-sized portions, I will get bored, and the video quality will suffer. I need to be able to write and record in one day and then edit in another. If I do more and I can't finish it in a day, I get anxious and lose sleep for leaving it half finished. I hope this sneak peek into my process was interesting. Also, special thank you to the support lately. I recently got partial YouTube partner, no ads or anything, just members and supers right now. Either way, I'm really grateful. So thanks to Linky, Willie P, and Dragon Fanatic. It's just 3 people right now, but it means a ton, and you know, before we know it, I'm gonna be reading off 100 names and I'm gonna not be able to do it from memory anymore, but thank you. Thanks for watching, and let's continue with games 51 through 60. Digimon Battle Spirit, 2 hours. My memory on this one is really fuzzy. You can tell I wasn't originally going to write a review for all of these. I played the games first. I didn't want to put the cart before the horse. I wanted to make sure that I was actually going to hit that 100 before I started making the reviews. It'd be embarrassing to start it and then get halfway through and then realize that I couldn't do it. But I did it. If you're familiar with the Battle Spirit series, this started on the Wonder Swan. I played the GBA one because I wanted that remastered full color experience. It's full color, which is something that was special back in the day. Basically, it's a fighting game, but rather than success being dictated by who is standing when the timer runs out, it instead works like coin battle in Smash. Each hit on an opponent causes them to drop orbs, and you collect them to build score. This means you can hit the opponent once and spend the rest of the time running away. Only the last 5 seconds of the match matters, aside from the final boss if you're playing the campaign. This system has the obvious flaw of, it's not the best fighter who wins, but who can get an orb and run away the best. It's not very fun. Controls are simple though, like most fighters on the GBA. It's impressive what they did with so few buttons. D-pad moves, A to jump, B to hit, and L and R to taunt. This simplistic control scheme is likely a holdover from its days as a Wonder Swan game. Since that system didn't have bumpers, you only had the D-pad and A and B effectively. There was more buttons, but they weren't used. Interestingly, the way the game handles Digivolution is more accurate than some of the more in-depth games from this time. Like Anode and Cathode didn't let you Digivolve. In BS you bump into Kulumon and Digivolve temporarily, and you're basically untouchable for that duration. Then you revert back, but this does little to stop the hit and run gameplay. It feels like this wasn't tested by people who like fighting games. It's a fighting game where you're incentivized to fight as little as possible. I don't recommend it even if you play it with friends. Demikid's Dark. This is one I reviewed in its own video. If you like this specific format and visual look, let me know. I think it's different and pretty cool looking, but others might find it annoying to look at, and I don't want to do it if it keeps, bothering people, so just let me know if you like the look of it. Howdy underlings. I love Pokemon, but I'm definitely very tired of Pokemon, so I decided to try something different. I tried Demikid's Dark, which looks like if Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! Raw dogged behind a Wendy's dumpster. Demikid's Dark version is a spin-off series from the SMT series. Despite this series trying to take a chunk out of the Pokemon market with its bright colors and kid-friendly aesthetic, it still retains its darker themes and SMT's conversational recruitment mechanic. You either love this mechanic or you hate this mechanic. Basically, rather than throwing a ball with a percentage chance to catch the monster, you instead have to chat them up like you're at a bar. Just like a bar, you have no idea how this conversation will end. Maybe they'll join you. Maybe they try to stab you. Maybe they get a bunch of friends together, give them a buff, and then they all take a turn stabbing you. There's a lot of stabbing. Personally, I don't like this mechanic very much. I think it's a little archaic and a sign of the game's age. It makes sense to be in these older games before catch mechanics were fully solidified by Pokemon, but nowadays I think the recruitment mechanics is holding SMT back from true widespread appeal. This is that moment where I'm talking about, please don't take me so seriously, because I know that's going to hurt some feelings. Combat is like your standard turn-based JRPG, but with some added annoyances. In most games, you level up from defeating monsters. Instead, you level your monsters by fusing monsters or by spending money on training. Evolution only happens for one monster, and it's your partner Demonmon, and that only happens at set story intervals. But they also level from their evolution, so it feels pointless to fuse other monsters into your main monster to level them, because they just level from evolving anyway. So there's no point in doing the fusion mechanic unless it's to unlock new monsters or to build out the rest of your team. So you're still gonna, use it pretty frequently. The silver lining is that because of this, combat outside of boss encounters is entirely optional. Combat is actually so unimportant that there's an auto battle system. It really feels like it doesn't want me to fight at all. The lead does level up a bit, so you do need to fight a little bit as the level cap of your monsters can't greatly exceed your own. The story is pretty bare bones. You play a boy whose friends are into the occult, just enough to get you started, then quickly becomes about your child being created just to save the demon world from a dark future. It's sort of an isekai, but not really. Basically, the demon plane and the human plane become connected and you travel to the demon plane. You go back and forth between the demon world and the human world, but you mostly spend your time in the demon world. But unlike other multicolor versions of games, you're sort of expected to play both dark version and light version to get the full story. It's like rather than having 2 sodas, you have 1 soda, but you have to share it with your little brother and he does backwash. The story mostly talks about themes of tyranny and preserving our future, even if it's just in little ways. Like planting a single tree in the past completely changes the future for the better, and it's hard not to like a positive message like that. It's not a horrible game as far as monster catchers go, but I think they simplified the wrong systems. I would have preferred a normal leveling system for monsters and the conversation mechanic to be dialed back or replaced entirely. Pokemon has pretty involved mechanics for those who want to delve deeper, but makes catching simple, so anyone can enjoy it. The systems that Demikids takes out aren't even that involved, and they replace it with a more annoying system. Imagine if Pokemon required you to catch Pokemon and feed them to your other Pokemon in order to get stat ups and level ups. It'd suck, but it wouldn't be that bad. Then add in to catch the Pokemon, you have to talk to the Pokemon, choose a response, have a Pokemon with a catch chance skill, hope you choose the right response, and hope that your catch chance is high enough in general. Then if you fail, they buff themselves and attack 3 times in a row. Makes catching a little annoying, right? Maybe this leveling system for Demikids could have worked, but only if monsters were easier to catch. Thankfully you don't do that much farming and the game can be beaten in around 15 hours. I'm just happy they did choose to leave out stuff like moon phases. That would have been annoying. The weird thing about the systems is that they supposedly differ between the versions. The wiki says that the dark version has more challenging combat and more difficult mechanics, but light has more complex fusion mechanics and simplifies other stuff like you earn more Maka, which is the money, and experience. It's weird that the version you buy is basically your difficulty slider, and there really isn't a way for people to know that. It's cool that the experiences are apparently very different, but for the most part in these multicolored versions, kids are just going to choose their favorite color scheme. It's not all bad, as the aesthetics of the game is superb. It looks good, it plays good, because it has 8-axis movement, sounds good, and the monsters all have friendlier or cooler designs than their mythological originals. There are definitely a few monsters that I saw like Asparus that I thought were better Pokeified than their SMT designs. This duck goose thing, stinking adorable. The 8-axis movement was also welcome. I was playing on the RG Cube XX and its D-pad is great for 8-axis games like this, but it was nice to also comfortably use the analog stick if I wanted to in a monster catcher. Pokemon has 4-axis movement, so using an analog stick just feels like a non-option. Final thoughts? As a kid, if I played this before Pokemon, I don't think I'd be as interested in the monster catcher genre. It's not really worth the $40 this would have released for, especially since you only get half the story. Fast forward a couple of decades, and I'd say it's at least worth trying since, you know, you can get it free. Since you couldn't get every game as a kid, it's kind of fun to see what everyone else was doing in the monster catcher genre around this time. But if you don't like the first 4 hours of the game, it doesn't get any better, so don't be afraid to drop it. A bit of a warning though, people do die, and in unpleasant ways, so you don't actually see it, but if you don't want to hear about a kid dying, maybe avoid playing it, but just a content warning in general if you decided to check it out. I was originally going to say that I don't think I'll play the light version, but knowing that it's easier, I'll probably speed through it out of curiosity. Maybe my negative opinions are just based on me playing hard mode. Demikids light version. I always meant to make a follow-up review and it got pushed to the side by other things. Much of what I said in the previous review works here, but light version is, interestingly, pretty different from dark version. I suggested that light might be an easy mode, and it is. A big reason why I couldn't find much info for dark is because most people play light and don't bother playing dark, which is part of why I made the title The One You Didn't Play, which was also a play on how you probably didn't play the series at all but played Pokemon instead. I assumed it'd be like Pokemon where there isn't a real difference between the versions, but your perspective on the story and involvement are entirely different. Even the mechanics and difficulty are pretty drastically different. They're 2 different experiences, still basically the same game though. In light version, you're experiencing a very serious story about tyranny, rebellion, fighting for freedom, and saving the planet. Like in dark, even planting a single tree can change our futures for the better. You will see a lot of people dying in both versions. The lead also has main character energy in this one, and there is a lot of story. In dark, Akira is constantly showing up late and rarely has much to say. He's a lone wolf type, and it makes dark feel like an afterthought. In terms of difficulty, in dark it was rare for me to fuse demons who were higher level than my player level. In light, it was so common to fuse high level demons, I often had to grind a little or wait until later to fuse again. Demons join your team much more easily, but your partner monster being kinda useless has only been further exaggerated. Since your monster evolves at set story intervals, you won't bother fusing demons with them to empower them. them. Instead, it felt like I had this weight chained to my ankle the whole time. Often I'd let the little anchor croak and then I'd continue fighting without him with no issues. Since he evolves and his level and stats are adjusted at evos, there isn't really a reason to acknowledge his existence until the final evo at level 45. Light is shorter and a grindless experience, if you want it to be. Dark version isn't hard, but it's harder than light. I'd recommend playing light, then decide if you want to keep going from that point. Cat Quest, 12 hours, over 5 playthroughs. This one has been on my back burner for a long time, since its release about. I picked it up one day on a steep sale, tried it a bit, then dropped it for the next thing. I decided to go back and finish it recently. Cat Quest is an open world action RPG where you play a cat whose sister was catnapped. The whole game involves doing side quests while you chase down the villain cat and being subjected to frequently terrible cat puns. The combat is incredibly shallow, feeling like a mobile game that does the bare minimum gameplay and then jams microtransactions down your throat. At the very least, there are no microtransactions, but mobile games have waifus, so I don't think it's necessarily a win for Cat Quest. Combos are very basic, 3 hits that feel like whacking things with a foam bat, magic is all AoE and very quick to cast, which is good, and the dodge is generous. Mechanically, it's very shallow as well, with all armors and weapons either boosting HP, armor, or magic. The combat is mostly a numbers game, making sure you're a high enough level for the part that you're on. But once you beat the game, there is a Mew Game Plus mode. You can enable a variety of modifiers to make the game harder. Technically, I beat it 3 times, but I'm only counting it once. I think Cat Quest 2 is a much better starting point if you really want to try this series. Game & Watch Vermin, 4 hours. This was the first Game & Watch game I considered beaten. I played it many different times throughout multiple remasters and reached more than 500 points multiple times. I'll include a clip from my retrospective, but for G&W games, you can't technically beat them. They're high score games, but in remasters for Game & Watch Gallery and Game Boy Gallery, they have rewards for milestones. In Game Boy Gallery, you get a little girlie cheering you on. In Glug, you get stars for every 200 points reached, maxing out at 5 stars for 1,000 points. I pulled the community tab and we all agreed on 200 being beaten, because you've seen the whole game at that point, and 1000 would be completionist, since some of these capped at 1000. Anyway, here's the review.
Game & Watch Vermin, the next entry in the Silver Series Game & Watch games. Vermin is one of the higher selling GWs, selling more than 1 million units, so people have a bit of a soft spot and nostalgia for this one. This is in spite of it being a Silver Series entry, the original set, and thus being much more rudimentary than many later GW games. In the US, this was localized to The Exterminator, immediately breaking the trend of one-word titles. I love the boxes like Vermin's Cream Box and the one-word titles, honestly. It gives these toys a sort of dystopian vibe, like Simulant Nugs, that vegan chicken nugget company. So making it a 2-word title is a downgrade for me. Seems minor, but it's about the theming. The Exterminator is a fine name, but it's not the one I would have chosen. If you were renaming it to make it more interesting to an American audience, the more sensible name would have been Whack, or Moles. Since this is just a portable whack-a-mole game, I honestly just described the entire game to you. It's whack-a-mole. On the physical game and watch, we have what looks to be the exact same housing and buttons as Ball. Makes sense, as this game also only needed 2 buttons. We have left, right, game A, B, time, and reset. The controls are super simple. Left moves left, right moves right. You'll move the guy holding the hammers, he takes up 3 spaces, left, right, and center. And the center is his body, and he can't hit moles with his body, but the left and right hammers can. So you move the guy left and right trying to hit the moles. The hit is automatic, so you only need to worry about the hammers being above the right holes as the moles breach the surface. Game A is easy mode, and has moles coming from the left 2 holes and the right 2 holes, with the center never being used. For Game B, the middle hole is also used for moles. You lose either game mode after hitting 3 misses. The gameplay is quite fun despite working very similarly to Ball. It's amazing how much of an aesthetic change can just change everything about how the game plays. As time goes on and the game gets faster and faster, you hit this flow state and it feels less like a reaction game and more of a rhythm game. Even though this is effectively the exact same as Ball, the perspective change makes all that difference and makes it much easier to time and predict catches. When playing Ball, I'd frequently have balls seemingly be directly next to each other, ready to fall at the exact same time. In reality, these balls on the inner track were falling faster, but sometimes the outer track might be slightly ahead. It was very easy to miss catches because you could never tell which one was actually first. But you don't have that problem here. I don't think there was ever a situation in which these 2 moles breached at the same time, so it's kind of super fun. This isn't to say it's without challenge. It gets to be very fast, and there's a bit of a quirk with the life system. In most games like this, if you lose a life, the board clears and it starts up again. Not in Vermin, though. After losing a life, it will resume play where it left off, so if you were overwhelmed before the life loss, you're likely to still be overwhelmed when it continues, making it very easy to lose multiple lives back to back. I did have a lot of fun with this one, one, and I definitely recommend giving it a try. It's not as complex as something like Greenhouse, but its reaction-based gameplay makes it much more exciting than Flagman. Nintendo seems to agree that this is one of the better titles, as it's been remade multiple times. Similar to how Ball got a remake for the Mario 35th Anniversary Game & Watch, Vermin was included in Zelda's 35th Anniversary Game & Watch, which is kind of puzzling. Vermin doesn't make that much sense as a Zelda tie-in. For Mario, you can do just literally anything. Mario does everything. Zelda kinda does one thing. It's especially weird since there was a Zelda Game & Watch game that was a double-screen game, but because it was a double-screen game, it wouldn't have worked. It's still just a weird choice. In this version, you play as Link as he whacks Octoroks. You can of course play this on RetroFab on itch, emulated on MAME with ROMs, or you can play Game & Watch Gallery 2 on Game Boy Color. In GWG 2, it received a remake version where you play as Yoshi trying to protect his eggs, and it only entirely changes the gameplay. This remake is actually pretty great because the way it elevates the gameplay in a variety of ways. They didn't settle on just doing a graphical update. In this version of Vermin, Yoshi has 6 eggs arranged in a circle, and from the outer edge will come Shy Guys, Koopa Paratroopas, and Boos. Shy Guys get to the eggs very fast, Koopas are slow, and Boos only move towards the eggs when you're not looking. Since Yoshi can hit 2 egg spots at once, positioning becomes that much more important. The animation to hit a baddie can take a little while, and moving has an animation too, so it's much more efficient to position Yoshi in a way that allows him to whack 2 guys at once. Get a little double fist action going. Yoshi's body also doesn't take up space in this one, but it can be a little harder to predict enemy distance and speed in this one. Personally, both are valid ways to play Vermin, but I prefer the original in this case, and that's due to its simplicity. Yoshi's Vermin has way too much going on and can be hectic, and I never really settled into the flow of the game like I did with the classic Vermin. I wouldn't say Yoshi's Vermin is a lesser version, it's more like a secret Game C option, but with much better graphics. I think Vermin works best in its simplest form though, so Vermin Classic is my favorite. The speed in these two just have totally different experiences. Vermin Classic on high speed has a flow. Yoshi's Vermin at high speed is chaotic. The best way to play Vermin is hands down Game & Watch Gallery 2 for GBC. Being a Game Boy Color game makes it very easy to emulate, literally everything can emulate it, and there's a chance it'll come to Switch Online like the third one did. There's no shortage of devices that can handle GBC emulation, but for just 30 to 40 bucks you can get an RG28XX from Anbernic, and it's more than good enough for this. You'll also be able to play GBA, NES, SNES, and PS1. This one is, however, a very simple experience, and might not be worth the work of setting up an emulator or the cost of getting a handheld. If you plan to play any other GW games, you may as well check this one out too. I just don't think you should go seeking this one out specifically. Personally, I'm considering buying a Zelda Game & Watch to get it because I haven't really played any of the classic Zeldas. I haven't played many Zeldas in general.
Elf Bowling 1, 3 hours. Would you believe me if I said I didn't play this during the Christmas season? In Elf Bowling 1 and 2 for the GBA, you play bowling. It's straightforward until the little elven bastards start moving. Elves in Paradise, Elf Bowling 2. 2 hours. It's a lie, a scam, a fraud. If I bought this game, I'd want my money back. There isn't any bowling in Elves in Paradise Bowling 2. It's shuffleboard. I don't think Santa even endorsed this game, because I don't think Santa would scam us. Bonus history time though, since there isn't anything else to say about this series. Elf Bowling 1 and 2 were both Flash games originally. That means that playing these on GBA might be the only way to play them since Flash has been discontinued and Flash emulators are a little spotty on performance. Barbie, Ocean Discovery. Now hold up before you click off, just give me a chance. Let me explain. I'm not joking. When I was growing up, my mom let me play with toys regardless of the gender that they were intended for. She read a magazine that said little boy moles that grew up playing with dolls became better socializers. I didn't play with dolls, and now I pretend to be a mole on the internet. So I guess they were right. While mom was perfectly fine with me getting any of the toys I wanted when we had the money for it, her boyfriends weren't. They were worried that I might grow up liking boys. Me? A boy kisser? No, never. The joke's on them though, because I followed their rules and now I like all genders. So, eat dirt, John, but not my dirt. I took special care to get the right dirt for my pot. Go eat loser dirt. Go eat the outside dirt. So while I was browsing for games to get easy 100% on retro achievements, I found the game Barbie's Ocean Discovery for the Game Boy Color. I checked how long it was to beat and it said about an hour. So I thought, I played worse for longer, but I really had nothing to base that on. I can't say I played many games for girls, if any. I had written it off in my head as bad before I even started, and I was annoyed by that. So I played the game. I actually played it, because I judged it too quickly. The plot is simple though. You're Barbie, and you're doing some ocean discovery. The title really sums up the whole thing. You need to go through the ocean and find the secret treasure. You do this by finding the part to various artifacts that unlock the next set of objects. Each objective in this version is effectively the same. You swim around in these bright and colorful environments looking for these bubbles with minigame icons. Then you complete the minigame and you get an item piece. You only need to beat the first level of each bubble to beat the game. These minigames weren't anything crazy. There's a game where you do a puzzle, launch pearls, then catch them with a clam, guide a turtle through a maze, poke sea enemies until they're all closed, roll cannonballs into a barrel, play a matching card game, play Simon, match bubbles to rings in a timing-based minigame, and play another maze but with a dolphin in it. You can easily beat the game in 30 minutes, but it's pretty fun. To get 100% though, you'll have to play all of the minigames 4 times, which increases the difficulty further. Overall, 356 people have mastered the game so far, which is getting all the achievements, and I was number 350. So it's very easy to master, but I had a decent time doing it. If I compared my thoughts on girl games to what the adult men around me were saying, I assumed that they were all garbage shovelware and not worth the time or money. Barbie Ocean Discovery wasn't even that girly. It wasn't great either, but it wasn't bad. I'd never pay $30 or more that these were going for in the day, but $5 that they average now, I paid more for worse. It was fun playing it because it wasn't anything like my expectations were, because it wasn't really a girly game. This was just an early learning game. Blue's Clues, Blue's Alphabet Book. I thought, hey, I played one early learning game for easy achievements, what's one more? I loved Blue's Clues growing up as a kid. The day Steve left, it was like a lifelong friend moved away. It still gets me sad thinking about it, so when I opened this and I was met with Steve, I felt a single tear roll down my face again. I can't believe he would make me relive this pain. You left, Steve. You can't force your way into my life again just like this. Then I heard that garbled, crunchy audio.
Where are all the pages?
I can never stay mad at you, Steve. It's kind of funny, though. Seeing Blue's Clues now and people getting all upset about it having drag queens in an episode and other queer people in one episode, it made me feel really good. It's like the show grew up with me, even when I stopped watching it. But I have to start talking about the game now, because if I talk too much about nostalgia and stuff like that, it starts to make me sad. But much like Barbie Ocean Discovery, Blue's Alphabet Book is a minigame collection. But interestingly, the game is designed in a way that you don't need to know how to read to play it. Nothing is explained to you because there is no text, just voice acting. It makes sense that it would be structured this way because the first line of the box art even says, "You're never too young to be an expert gamer." That's the entire design philosophy behind this game. A game that doesn't skimp on the fun just because you don't know your ABCs. I dig it. So you start by clicking a page in Blue's book. Steve takes the book from Blue and says, "Where's all the pages?" Then you click and you move on to a minigame. Blue wants you to match the object on the tray to the one in her book. You do this 6 times, then you find a clue and Steve writes it down. 1 letter done, 25 more to go. The next game has us pushing a letter through a maze to fill in the word. You do that minigame twice, then a clue, then the next minigame. The next minigame is completing the word, so maybe you have to read just a little bit. You get the idea of the game by now though. We do this for every single letter. As we progress, we unlock more minigames. Once you have a minigame unlocked, you can play it in survival mode. It doesn't call it that, but that's what it is. It's a mode where you play as long as you can stand to play. You can keep playing even when you fail, but Retro Achievements has achievements for playing these games for quite a while, like playing the sand maze 5 times in a row without leaving the minigame. Of course, these aren't a challenge besides Bear's leaf catching minigame and Soap's memory game, which just goes on for just a little bit too long. It was still fun to play this game though, as a reminder of my childhood. By the time I got a Game Boy Color, I had grown out of Blue's Clues and her alphabet book because I knew how to read. Well, enough to enjoy Pokemon Red at least. Game & Watch Ball, 4 hours. Once again, I not only played a lot of the original, but a lot of the remaster. It was my toilet game for about a week.
Let's finally talk about what you're here for, the game. This is Ball. You have 5 buttons, left, right, game A, game B, and time display. Left and right cycles the left and right hands in the various allowable positions, moving both simultaneously to the left or right depending on where you move them. Then the game buttons change the game modes between game A and game B. Time just showed the clock. The watch idea actually came out really close to the release, and I think they added it more just because they could. It's like they were trying to pack in as many features as they could. How you play Ball depends on the game mode, but basically you just juggle the balls. The balls go up, then you have to move the hand to where it'll land, and then when it hits the hand, it'll automatically go back up. If it doesn't land in a hand, you miss, and if you miss even once, you lose, and have to start over from the beginning. In game A, you have to juggle 2 balls, and get a point for each ball tossed up. In B, you juggle 3, and for each ball caught, you get 10 additional points. The difficulty of this game is going to come from the same difficulty you get with all Game & Watch games. Since the character and balls don't move more than a few frames a second, you can't even really call these frames, but because they aren't actually animated, it can be hard to judge when things are going to land. There will be many occasions where both balls appear to be in the same position and look like they're going to land at the same time. So you go to catch one, but miss the other. It can be very frustrating, which is why I like the Game Boy remake so much. These run at 60 FPS, so you can see which is going to fall first most of the time, and they can be more generous in the timing by some of these games extending the timing window to collect things. Ball is unfortunately one of the few Game & Watch games that didn't receive a remake, so in order to play it, you'll need to buy the reproduction handheld from Nintendo that came out 15 years ago on secondhand stores like eBay. These are still plentiful and cheap. You can even find the originals on Japanese auction sites for close to their original price, just, 50 to 60 bucks. But there wasn't a video game re-release outside of the cameos in games like Game Boy Camera or its release on the DSiWare. So the only practical way you'll be able to play this is through MAME emulation and finding compatible ROMs. Now, I'm not someone who hates emulation. I prefer it actually because of sites like Retro Achievements making them better. But this is one of the rare cases where emulation just doesn't do a good job of faithfully recreating the experience. I don't know why they didn't remake it, but this was part of the Silver Series, or the first series of GW games, so I have a pretty good idea of why these weren't remade. These were originally made by Gunpei Yokoi while he was on the train watching someone play with a calculator. I can imagine him now watching someone type 80085 into the calculator and giggling. I love Mr. Yokoi though. He made my favorite video game system, the Wonder Swan. Anyway, Mr. Yokoi made this concept up for Ball and brought the idea up to Nintendo, and they said, sure, if you can come up with 3 more games. He struggled to think of just Ball alone, but he agreed anyway. Yokoi thought it was a pretty novel idea. He said it was a novel application of old technology, making the old new again. Later on in the future, Ball was received pretty negatively from some outlets like Nintendo Life calling it primitive or unsophisticated compared to games near the end of the Game & Watch's series. I'm guessing Nintendo agreed and thought Ball wasn't worth giving a second life. This was just the first iteration of the idea, so they weren't really sure of how they could push this idea. It's a creative idea, but they made better later, which I 100% agree with. Out of the 30 or so Game & Watch games that I played, this is probably one of the least engaging ones. It can be played 100% on autopilot. Your eyes will glaze over as you're pressing left and right. The only difficulty change is speed and an extra ball, but the games are already short. Most of my plays of Ball lasted less than 5 minutes, and I was done. But of course, I dropped this one faster because I didn't have it portable like Game Boy games or the original. But if I had an original or a reproduction, I think I'd like it more. I think the appeal of the Game & Watch isn't in one game, but instead a collection of them. Picking them up and playing them, swapping handhelds when I get bored of one. I can imagine myself having a little basket of these little suckers sitting right next to me, and I just dig around and pull out whichever one is closest. Yokoi was ahead of his time, despite this one being one of the less positively received games in modern times. While everyone at Nintendo was pushing hard for newer, more expensive hardware, he suggested using some slightly outdated stuff and cheaper button batteries. This is in part why it was so cheap to produce. Old LCD screens, small cheap batteries, very few buttons, and a small thin slate-style device. It wasn't advanced. It was hardly practical. A new application of old tech, which is exactly what he was shooting for after seeing that person playing with a calculator. Mr. Yokoi later on used a similar idea for making the Wonder Swan shortly before his death. It was a system that came late, used old hardware, but was great in spite of that because of its amazing library. A great reminder to modern gamers that power doesn't always mean the system is good. It's about the games that it has. Mr. Yokoi was simply built different, and I'm starting to think that we won't ever see another designer like him in your lifetime. I'll live forever, so I might see another Gunpei Yokoi in my lifetime. But we really do need a new one now. People are struggling, and games are expensive and looking like a luxury for only the most well-off of gamers. We really need someone to come along and make a cheap system with good games. I would sell my second spine for a new $100 portable gaming system. Before I give a score, I think you should try at least one Game & Watch game in your life, but this isn't the one. This one is the first, but with how difficult it is to get one that gives you an authentic experience, I'd say it's entirely skippable, unless you really like the novelty of it or just want it as a, piece that you can show off. When I think Game & Watch, I think of Ball, but when I think of a good Game & Watch game, I think of Egg or Greenhouse. Compared to those, Ball is pretty far behind. What I'm trying to say is, Ball is the first Game & Watch, and it definitely plays like it's the first one. I can't see myself playing this one ever again unless I somehow got a physical one.
That's it for this 10. Quick for me since I didn't have to worry about scripting much. I should really review everything that I beat. I should really just start making dedicated review videos for every game that I beat. That way I don't ever have to write a script. Wait, no, I'd still have to write the review script. Thanks for watching either way. Don't forget to tip your Overlord. I take likes, subs, and sports games that lie about their contents. Also members like Dragon Fanatic, Willie Pete, and Linky. If you join, you'll get your name read aloud at the end of the video like I just did. I'll see y'all later. Bye.